Just give it a second. It's gotta load. Let me see the schedule.
We got.
I wanted to peek at the next one. I don't know if I want to stay in it. I wasn't sure.
Oh, gee. Let me see. Technically, we could stay here and look, since all these instances stream the same thing. We see here at the bottom. 30 video yoga. That's our one. Let's get the zoom. Next one is use.
Yeah, 106.
Oh yeah, they could raise that back up. Hey, it's still lowered by like a couple. It's still lowered. Bunny meat is at 5. Gotta be awake by then. Gotta be like fully prepared by then. And let's see if I can grab my chair without my tracking completely killing itself.
I'm tempted. If this one doesn't interest me too much, I wanna take a break and play Ark, record, market, and community one, and the bunny meetup we'll go to.
Record what now?
Marketing and
I got you. Oh, you look so comfy. I would sleep on you.
Oh, you have an earring. Wait, let me see.
There's a really fucked bounding box.
Yeah, I see that.
You can
I've
use
gotten a lot of
Veer's.
fixes.
I got you. It's actually really pretty though.
I like it.
Nice.
I'm still trying to stay happy about the outfit. I'm be honest with you. I'm trying to like it.
It's your first one. You did a great job on it.
I did the whole thing from scratch, so I guess.
I mean, when you sit down, you're doing Pilates and things.
First attempt ever.
Yeah, I don't trust myself at all.
Oh, my neck is messed up. Are you planning to go back to Club Fin now?
Honestly, there's nothing really coming up that I'm interested in. I have like a couple people in the club. I'm probably gonna go to the big club and just fucking delete my index again.
Okay.
Now that they've recovered.
Alright. Then it was lovely meeting you. I hope you enjoyed the yoga.
I did. I
Hell
should
yeah.
probably try and do yoga.
I go to Slimes every Monday when I can.
Is the slime one an American time or like?
It's different for everyone in the server. Like, for instance, for me, it's at 4 p.m. EST. I think it shows you your time if you're in the Slime server and you click the events. Can you see it?
That'd make it 10 p.m. for me. I mean, I guess that's doable. I know the yoga we just watched. They have more yoga-friendly sessions as well. 'Cause, again, I know the backup instructor, the guy in the background, the tracky. He was the backup instructor. In case Castiel died.
Don't say it like that.
You know what I mean?
I know. It's not. It sounds like you're planning something.
I'm gonna kill him.
Murder.
Take over.
My yoga group now. So the bunny meetup is at 5.
Yeah.
Fuck it. I can go ahead and play a little bit of art. I might be addicted.
It's okay. I may
It's
not
my
own the
autism.
version y'all got.
Don't say that, I'll gift it to you. Nice
Don't.
meeting you.
You have yourself a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my goodness.
What are you gonna do if I go and play some art right now?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't really got anything else that I'm interested in. If you're not gonna play with anyone, you could stream to me if you want.
Okay, that sounds fine. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shut off all of my trackers. And I'm gonna take off my chest and waist because
No,
my
you're gonna-
waist is too tight. I'm keeping on everything else, but
No, I don't mean it like I'm like upset that you're taking it. I was like, you said, no, takes out chest. No more. Entire whole
Yeah,
thing
the,
gone. Just arms.
waist tracker is always too tight, especially today. It was a little painful. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need to get yourself some better straps or something, or like some clothing for it that actually like work with it.
They said they were sending me some, but then they never sent me a code, I think. So I emailed them again recently. It was like, hey, am I still getting this? I want to make sure. I know you're busy with con and everything, but just making sure.
Yeah, I got you. Here, let me take off my tracker.
Should be everything off. Did you enjoy the yoga?
I did. It was a pleasant experience. There you go. I took off my trackers. I'm not mocking you. Trust me, it's not something to be jealous about. Just turn off app.
I'm gonna turn off my heart tracker too. That's one cool thing. Okay, I got the heart tracker because I think I told you about the guy that gifted it to me. He didn't like somebody I was talking to, so he was like, alright, peace out. But the cool thing of having that now is that I could just heart rate on it.
You
I
wanna?
think that's interesting. I could do streams where my heart rate's on the screen because I have the hardware for it now.
Time to do horror streams, gang.
Oh god. 7 days alone.
Silent Hill,
Oh god.
the remake for 2.
Oh lord, I'd die. Okay, I'm gonna turn off my headset.
Alright.
Text me when you're ready to call, and then I'll call you when I'm ready.
Alright. I'll probably text you once I've got something to drink.
Ba 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 ba. Cutie. I'll talk to you in a bit.
Tú también. Alright. I won't explain what that. I can't. I just said you two. Like. Okay. I'm dying, gang.
Hi everyone. I hope you've been sleeping really well this convention and through all of the other panels, and that this panel is going to be no exception, as today I'm going to be talking to you about UI, UX, and accessibility in world design. Though perhaps this is maybe one of those learn in your sleep things, and right now you've got a UX for Dummies book under your pillow, and I'm a fuzzy manifestation for that. Let's go with that. But let's start with what we're not talking about today. This isn't a Unity UI components tutorial. We're not doing a beat by beat how to do something, how to make UIs. You probably want a more generic tutorial for that. This is more of a concepts kind of thing. Likewise, we're not doing programming, 3D modeling, or VR chat specific setup. These, again, are all things that you can learn about separately. Hopefully, if you don't know these things, this panel is going to give you a jumping off point for going to learn about those things and the kind of things that you can do with that stuff. But again, not a technical panel. This is not a technical panel. And finally, I do not have formal accessibility training. I am not a professional game designer or have any qualifications in the life of accessibility, but I do have related experience that I'm going to tell you about, and it's just something to be aware of. Like you, I'm a hobbyist and I'm keen to help out other hobbyists. So if this isn't what you're after, go to Clubfin or the lobby, or if you're watching on YouTube, go click back and try something else, a different video, I won't mind. Anyway, brief introduction. I'm Nido Noku, or just Nido if you prefer. I'm from the UK, and I've been part of the furry community since the text-based role-playing days of 2002, and I've been here in VR Chat since December of 2020. I'm also staff for Confuzzled, which is the UK's largest furry con, which finished recently a couple of weeks ago. I'm still getting over the con crud, so if I cough a little, sorry about that. There I've had a number of different technical, creative, and logistical roles over the years, though most recently I've moved into working on the VR portal, which, if you're familiar with Frailty's Gateway events, similar kind of thing to those. Lets our attendees and their friends and visitors in VR Chat interact with each other. As for my own background on this specific topic that I'm talking about today, when I'm sadly a lot less fuzzy looking than this, I'm a web software developer for a small company that makes websites and web-based software for various organizations, mostly regional government and higher education. For customers like those, the law requires websites be fully accessible, following what's known as WCAG, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is the industry standard for that kind of thing on the internet. Therefore, thinking about good UI design is something I have to do day to day, and it's something that I try to do continuously when I'm building in VR Chat as well. So, what are we doing here? What am I planning to talk to you about today? Well, VR Chat is a pretty inclusive place on the whole. When you're building content for here, you're building it for everyone. You don't have to be here very long to know that this is a place where people can be exactly what they want to be, not just what they're told to be. That can be fuzzy, clanky, cool, weird, stylish, whatever. We get to be true versions of ourselves and not get held back by the limitations of the real world. And that's pretty awesome. But what can go wrong? When we start building worlds, we're often thinking about what we want to make first for ourselves. That's normal. You design stuff first for you and maybe your friends as well. But if you want your world to have a wider audience, you're going to need to want to build worlds for people that you don't know. People who have very different backgrounds, tastes, preferences, and of course, possible impairments. And that can be pretty daunting. How can we build a world so it's enjoyable by anyone? How do you make sure you don't unintentionally exclude somebody? Because no one wants to do that on purpose. Well, we're world creators. Let's get creative, and world building is all about solving different kinds of technical problems as you go along, and this is really no different. When you're building, you probably have some specific goal in mind for your world, which you think about. Maybe a specific view that you want to capture, or maybe you've got a mood board with references that you refer to as you go along. This is the same sort of thing. You need to keep those ideas about usability and accessibility in your mind as you build, and we can build places for anyone to escape to. So, let's create dreams and not nightmares. So, let's make sure we're all on the same page. Let's define what is UI, UX, and accessibility exactly. First, you've got user interface design. This is the bit that most people understand. It's creating buttons, text boxes, handles, boxes, levers, switches, trigger zones, all those sort of things that control how someone interacts with a system. A system can be a program, a game, a coffee machine, anything that we as thinking creatures use to do something, be it fun or to achieve a task. In this case, be interactive in a world. User experience design, or UX, is a little bit more nebulous, but I like to define it as controlling how an interaction that you created makes you feel. Normally, most designers want these to be positive, happy, pleased, excited, delighted, accomplished, all of those kind of nice feelings. They can also be fairly neutral things, just calm, reassured. In the context of a game, you might even want negative feelings like unnerved or scared or, worried or whatever. But you generally want to avoid things like frustrated, angry, confused. Those are sensations which are almost always universally negative, and avoiding that is part of the goals of UX design. And finally, accessibility. Well, for correctness, because it's not a real presentation without one, let's check Wikipedia. It defines accessibility as the design of products, services, vehicles, or environments so they're usable by disabled people. That's a pretty good definition. But I will add a note, which is when you design for accessibility, you'll almost always make your designs better for people without disabilities as well. In the real world, places that are made wheelchair accessible, for example, now also become easier for people with kids in pushchairs or heavy luggage. Audio beeps for those with poor vision at a street crossing means that even if you were distracted by your phone, it's time to cross the road. These are all things where an accessibility aid helps regular people. And I'm sure you can all think of more examples as well in your day-to-day lives. So, what are the accessibility types we should be thinking about in the context of VR world design? These are the main categories. You have vision, audio, cognitive, and movement. And you should also remember that disabilities can have different causes and lengths. They can happen from birth. You can be born with a condition, such as colorblindness. With age, things like your eyes can then deteriorate over time. We all end up probably needing glasses by the end. But they can also be caused temporarily by an injury, like you break an arm or you're recovering from surgery. And the results of accessibility can then be a permanent life-changing thing, or they might just be temporary. Sorry about that. Get some water. So, let's dig into a few of the details here. Okay. How much did I miss there? Okay. Well, I'll go back to low vision, monocular vision, the inability to see with only one eye, and vestibular disorders, vertigo and dizziness. That's also a bit of a crossover with cognitive things. As an example, colorblindness. If you're in an instance right now with more than, say, 12 people who were born with a Y chromosome, statistically, one of those people are looking at this and saying, that's the same picture. If you don't think you're colorblind, you think I'm playing a joke or something, this wouldn't be the first time I've heard of someone only finding out they were colorblind in VR chat. Please do get checked. But colorblindness, it's a surprisingly common thing that affects at least one half of our species. And it's an example of how, disabilities can affect a lot of different people. So, audio. Obvious one is deafness, inability to hear things, or not hear things unless they're really, really loud. Conversely, you have audio sensitivity, people who have difficulty with particular noises. I have a slight tinnitus in this ear, which can be affected by certain frequencies, and that can be quite uncomfortable. And the other one is mono hearing. You've got people who can't hear at all out of one ear, and that can be very difficult if they're trying to tell where a sound is coming from. Cognitive. This is often known as, one of the invisible disabilities, or these are a number of things which are known as invisible disabilities, but are just as important as the others. Dyslexia is a common condition. Difficulty comprehending specific words or reading difficulties, that kind of thing. Social anxiety. I know a lot of friends with social anxiety in VR chat where they found it a lot more comfortable in this place to be comfortable with other people, but they can still get overwhelmed in very crowded or tight instances with lots of people in. ADHD and autism. This is one of my own, as I sadly suffer from ADHD. And my hyperfocus sadly did not let me spot the fact that there is a spelling mistake on this thing. It is, you'll often come across worlds where you've got little fidget toys and things. Those can be quite calming and pleasant for people with autism, as they're a nice little distraction or something to play with when you're otherwise overwhelmed by the people around you. Phobias. We all have things that we don't like, but phobias are especially uncomfortable. If you've played games like Satisfactory, you'll know there's options to turn off spiders and replace them with pictures of cute little kittens. They're still just as dangerous, but it's a nice touch for people who do not like the imagery of spiders. That kind of thing is very important to think about when you're creating maybe, say, a spooky world. You want to be upfront about what kinds of imagery people are going to see in there. And the last one, protective avoidance. This is an interesting one. I came across a recent example where there was a nice world that had been created, and there was a lot of alcoholic items around. And someone asked, hey, could you have an option to turn those off? Because I'm trying to deal with issues around that right now. And protective avoidance is the act of deliberately distancing yourself from things that could be uncomfortable for you. If you have certain things in your world that could be uncomfortable for people that are trying to avoid certain imagery or things, that's something else to think about. And finally, movement. Obviously in VR we move around with our control sticks, but there are still considerable things to think about here. You've got motion sickness, the condition of, there's a reason we have the teleport mode. But you've also got general kinds of shaking or being bounced around that can be uncomfortable for some people. You also have single-handed input. This is a problem which a number of worlds have, where, say, for example, you have those menus which you open by making a two-handed gesture. How do you do that if you've only got one hand? This one is something which I'm sure we're all familiar with, even if just one of our controllers runs out of power. But it's something that a lot of VR creators seem to miss sometimes. They assume everybody has two inputs. And likewise, finally, you've got non-VR players. There are people who have such, strong motion sickness, for example. They simply can't play in VR at all, and they are stuck on desktop. Building worlds for them as well is something that we all need to think about. So that's a lot of things to consider. Does this mean that we're going to have to compromise our artistic vision for our worlds? No. You can have both lovely looking worlds and make them accessible. Here's a few things to go through. When you're choosing colors for your world and the interfaces for your world, be consistent. Use a small palette of colors. Don't make it look like a crayon box has exploded all over your UI. This can make it easier to have specific colors that you'll assign to certain meanings. Check the contrast between foreground and background. If you have white text on a yellow background, that's a lot harder to read than black text on a yellow background, for example. And also watch out for important cultural differences in color. In Eastern cultures, red means something very different to what it does in Western cultures. You may want to make sure that you're not accidentally misusing a color, if that's the right word to use that. Fonts. Clear, easy to read fonts. Avoid display fonts. These are hard to read, and for people with reading difficulties, makes it even harder to parse what the text says. Make it bigger. Make text bigger. However it looks in the editor, it probably needs to be bigger than that, because the editor is always great at lying about how big things look. Test in VR, bigger things are easier to click on. And does it need to support Unicode? If you're building for an international audience and maybe you have some user interface that displays people's names, you're going to need to make sure that the character set can display those characters, and it'll look weird if suddenly the character set has to change halfway through because it needs to display a character set that it doesn't support. Keep a look out for that. If you need a good source of fonts that are free and you can just include them in your project, try fonts.google.com. They've got a big font library that you can just pick from, lots of different typefaces, something that's suitable for everyone. Wordage. Use as few as possible. I redrafted that sentence several times to make it much, because it started off much longer. Less words, easier to understand. Likewise, simple words. No one is interested in your sesquipedalian terminology or how big your dictionary is. Simpler words are much easier for everyone to understand and is a benefit for anybody who has English as a second language. Use technical terms sparingly. If you have stuff in your world which is, you maybe you've got an option to turn bits of the system on and off, prefer using words that people will recognize. In a recent world that I worked on, we had light shafts coming through the windows. In the UI, I referred to these as sunbeams. Technically speaking, they're called God rays, but not everybody knows that term, so sunbeams. And avoid using confusing language, things that are vague, double negatives. Again, these are all not great for people with cognitive difficulties who are trying to parse what your text means. And for icons, use standard icons if they exist for the concept that you're trying to display. If it's something turns on and off, use power. If it's relating to sound, use a speaker. That green icon, you probably recognize it from your remote control on your television for meaning contrast. If something has a already existing icon, use it. Makes it easier for people to understand without needing to even know what the English necessarily. And likewise, don't misuse icons. Don't use an icon that already has an established meaning to mean something else. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't make your icons look cool. As long as you don't mess around with the overall shape and definition of the icon, you can theme them. For example, this is on the left here, we've got the general accessibility icon, which is used by Windows and Mac to mean accessible tools and options. On the right is the fuzzy version created by the Confuzzled design team for all of their accessibility related things, both in VR and outside of VR. You can still tell what it means. As long as you can tell the overall definition of what something means, it's good. So, hopefully you're starting to think about how these are less three separate things that you're thinking about, and more stuff relating to usability, UI and UX, and how accessibility is part of everything. It affects all of your design choices. User interfaces are everywhere. And if you're trying to think about what should my UI look like, look around the real world, because in VR we are creating things that look like real life. That said, watch out, as sometimes even things like light switches can be confusing. On the left, from my perspective, the left-hand light switch is turned on and the right one is turned off. But if you come from the US, you might think the opposite is true. Cultural differences exist even in user interface design for the real world. So, let's start going through some specific examples. Please try not to use cubes. If you recognize this specific example, I've spoken to this world creator and I know they're planning to update this UI when they have time. But please don't use cubes for your UI boxes. They are really hard to use. Which one of these buttons is the button that turns the mirror on? or which one turns colliders on and off. You can't tell. There's no way to know which one is turned on or off either. Things like this, box UI is fine when you're prototyping, but try not to leave them in your final game. It's really hard to use. Likewise, if you've got extremely tall or small avatars, you can't always reach these things. The size difference is related to how big the object is. And ultimately, they don't look good. If you've got this really pretty, realistic looking world, and then you put a box in it, everyone can tell if they've played VR chat long enough that it's a UI box, but it reminds them they're in VR. They're not in the real world. Maybe think about how you could make this look part of the actual world. So you may try switching to something like this, one of these components, but again, you can turn tooltips off these days. A lot of people who like immersion turn off tooltips, and if you do that, what do these buttons do? You can't tell. Put labels on your buttons and your controls. When you have a user interface, you need to know what state it's in. Is this turning something on, or is it turning something off? Make sure visitors can tell what state that button is in. And on the whole, prefer buttons that turn things on. If you need something to be on by default, just have it be on by default. Don't have something where you're turning it on to turn something off. That's very confusing. This example up here, the top example is from a much earlier world by Sam and Kamal, but then you can see one of their newer worlds where they learned from the experience of building that one, and it's now much easier to tell which of the buttons are on and off. Here's another example from Rainy Days. This is a really nice, cozy world. I've hung out here a few times with a few friends. It's pretty easy to tell which buttons are on and off here, even if you have color blindness. The UIs are well laid out. They use the Unity UI component, so you can target them from a distance, even if you're laid down relaxing. And they continue the design throughout the world. The second panel there is one which is further on the world, and you can see they don't use icons for everything on that one, because how do you have an icon for plush fur? It would be confusing to try and come up with a concept for that, so just use words. Accessible state changes. This is a UI that I worked on for the most recent Confuzzled portal. You want to think about, you want to generally have more than one kind of indicator, because more indicators makes it easier for people to tell that something has changed. Use brightness and contrast, more so than changes in the hue of your colors. Those are much easier to tell. Likewise, use checkbox icons or something similar that is present and not present. But again, watch out for cultural differences, because a mistake I made here is circles in Japan often mean on. So this could be a little bit confusing to a Japanese user as to which one is on. Are two things on, and what does the other one mean? It can be, that is something to watch out for. Probably would have been better if I made those squares. You can use movement, but don't use too much movement. For people with maybe tremors or difficulty targeting things, or even just a controller going bad, this one seems to keep twitching on me, it can make it really hard to click on things if they're moving around, so use subtle movement. And likewise, use audio, potentially. Again, not the only thing that you should have for people with hearing conditions, but have something blip or click to indicate they've been the action has been accepted. So, what's some other ways of displaying your UI? The one for Confuzzled was just a panel floating in the world, but you can also think about having UI be diegetic. In Finn's Aquarius world, there is a specific control panel screen in the world. And doing that, they were able to use a standard asset store UI pack that was designed for like 2D video games. You can see the similarity to Ori Will-o'-the-Wisp's control panel there, the sort of stacked options. It works really well, and it blends nicely in universe with the world, and it's without drawing attention to it when you're not using it. What else we got? We've also got physical buttons. This is from Anti-Heat's apartment. Here you actually have to physically press the button in, which for a sci-fi themed world feels really funky. These buttons also change their state, icons, colors to indicate their state as well, which is good. And if you do have difficulty pressing things, there is a little toggle there to switch the modes to a more traditional laser style functionality, which is good for accessibility. And you might want to have a combined approach. For Putt-Putt Golf, they have a standard UI panel for general kind of world option things, but when you're starting to get ready to play the game, the controls for changing your ball color or configuring your club, that is done with physical items that you click on, and you can immediately test them and see how they look. That's a nice way of having different controls for different kinds of feeling. So, this world is the cause of this talk. It's a really nice world. I like it aesthetically. I've hung out here for several hours chatting with friends, and it's pretty cozy. But this world caused me frustration, which again is that thing you're wanting to avoid when you're doing UI world design, or UX in world design. I was hanging out with friends. We moved from the sofa area to lounging on the bed and having a nice long chat, but I needed to adjust the colliders on the bed, so where's the menu? I look around, quite a cluttered world, I couldn't find it. Maybe it's near the spawn point. Turn to the spawn point. No, can't really see anything here. Where's the menu? Where is it? Where's the menu? Like, it's not... It took until I was literally standing 2 feet in front of the panel before it turned into a menu. And the cherry on top here is that it's a curly font, so it's even hard to read. I do not hide your user interface. People need to be able to find it. Introduce the menu close to the spawn point. Make it obvious that this is the UI. If the full menu is closed when it's not in use, indicate that this is a menu, by the way. You can still style it to complement your world, but you need to make it visible. For large worlds, you're going to want to have multiple access points to your menu. Generally speaking, you don't want to be more than 10 seconds away of travel time to get to the menu, and you want to have each of them have a consistent look so you can recognize it from a distance. Show the most important options first if you've got a lot of options, and divide menus into logical tabs or groups. And use persistence. We have it now, but not all worlds use it yet. If you're using persistence, have something that says saving, or your options are being saved. That way people know that if they configure their world and come back, it's going to be like that next time they come in. And once this becomes a common option, we'll be able to all enjoy that. We'll be able to not have to do that quite so much. So again, here's an example from my own stuff. For the confuzzled VR portal, we have this small mode that the menu starts in, and then when you approach it or click on it, it expands this larger option. We use standard icons for the main tabbed area, for the main areas of the menu, and we also have that one big maximum performance button, which immediately sets all the performance options in one go, which is a time saver. You may recognize Finn's world again, and likewise, you probably recognize that that is the menu, but it's not the same menu. It's one that they added to another area of the world. Again, makes it now easy so that you don't have to go all the way back to the main room to reconfigure options. And this is from Alpha Elevation, which is a recent world by Alpha Monster, which is really good. It has the great concept of, it introduces the UI in the spawn area for the first time, so you recognize it. It repeats it as soon as you exit the spawn area, and you see it again. And then after you've traveled through the world for a bit, you see it again, and you start to realize, this is the menu. I can come back here and set my options. So, what about when we're wanting to have a more physical experience and we're recreating reality? This is Styro Video. It's styled after a cozy community center, a place for friends to watch nostalgic videos together. You could have a list of URLs, but on the right there, you can see a library of videos. You have these players. You grab a piece of media off and you present it to the player, and it animates and loads the video. Gives you a very nostalgic feeling. Again, it's a way of creating a mood in your world, that I'm here to be cozy and watch something old together, not just pick something from a playlist like it's Netflix. And what about more involved experiences? This is Fractone, which is a really neat world, which is a full music synthesizer. I don't know how to use a music synthesizer. This UI is pretty confusing to me, but UI synthesizers are complicated. This is a real this is a real UI for a synthesizer. You'll see it's very similar. The difference is that for the VR one, it's been tweaked, so it's easy to control with silly hands like this, and when you're plugging things together, the cables kind of disappear afterwards so that they're not cluttering up the display, which is a way that VR can enhance something that otherwise would be a problem for physical stuff. So, you've got UI down. What about the mood for your world? How does that affect the kind of interface choice that you make? For a racing game like this, Jet Ski Rush, you're going to want to have something more physical and tactile. You're trying and competing against other people. It's a challenge. But say you're driving around and that's not part of the experience. This is Hockle Knight. It's a big giant city world where you drive around, but the controls for it are just like they would be in a regular driving game with a little control stick. This world is about hanging out with your friends and going on a road trip together. You don't want the driver to constantly be, how do I drive this thing? You want a relaxed experience for them so that they can take part in the conversation. So, you want to construct something. You want to build a place. When we're building worlds, we want them to feel real. These are spaces. We need to think like architects and how people will move around. Where will they gather? What are the choke points? How do we make sure they see the whole thing? Set the tone. Use the spawn point of your world to establish the mood. Maybe build a little bit of anticipation. When you enter the event world here, you're not seeing the stage immediately. You have to come around a corner and it opens up, building anticipation. You want to give a comfortable space for players to wait for their friends to arrive, but see the try to avoid column. You don't want to make it too welcoming. You want to encourage players to leave the spawn eventually. So, don't make it too elaborate. Encourage them out of the space. Use light and things like that to guide the path. Use the entry area as well to provide content warnings, codes of conduct, and the initial world options. If you've tried to avoid having only one spawn point, a lot of people forget this, but you can have multiple spawn points, so that when people land in, they don't all land on top of each other, like they've just piled in through a door and crushed each other. Use multiple spawn points so that doesn't happen. Don't shock or scare players. That seems obvious, but need to say it. Don't scare people as soon as they're coming in. And likewise, if you have an intro sequence to your world, make sure the player has finished loading and is paying attention. Don't have an intro sequence play without some kind of interaction from the user first. That way you know they're paying attention, they haven't taken their headset off while they were loading worlds. Once they are in the world, use signage, diegetic signs within the world that guide people around them, for example, and tell them where things are. Those signs could also double as teleport buttons, letting people jump straight to the location. You do want to consider the balance between exploration and finding your friends. For example, somewhere like the Frailty Lobby or the Hockle Knight Giant City world, exploring and finding where people are is part of the fun. If you just had a teleport straight to friend button, that would be a bit not so fun. And you wouldn't see the world, you just immediately start talking to your friends and never see it. Conversely, a cozy world, the one thing I'm not such a big fan on for this particular world is that when you enter the main lobby space, I can't tell behind which door my friends are. That's a little bit frustrating, and you have to start trying each one in turn to discover where people are. In likewise the dealer's den here, you'll have, if you've gone to the big menu, you'll see there's buttons to jump you straight to the zone where your friends are, because you're not in the dealer's den to necessarily explore and look around just to look at the world. You're there to try and find people and achieve a task. Meet up with friends, go shopping. What else we got? So, disconnected spaces. Let me just check. I'm audible, yes. Disconnected spaces. If you've got worlds which are split into zones. So, for example, you've got a private bedroom space and a main area, and you've got teleports that link them. Put in markers that indicate you're about to teleport. This world has this really nice little subtle thing that appears as you start to round the corner that says, if you pass over this, you're going to teleport. That's a nice little affordance, as they're known, which is a term meaning a thing that lets you know something is possible. Likewise, if your world involves dynamic movement, I'm sure a lot of us remember Feralti Silver, you could use those zip lines. A lot of people would find a terrifying drop into the jungle disconcerting. They have an option. You can enable teleports instead. Even something small like a little drop can be disconcerting. Likewise, 2 years ago for Confuzzle 2024, we had what was 2 years ago? 1 year ago. For Confuzzle 2024, we had these bubble tubes where you could jump in, it would shoot you up into the upper areas of the caverns of our world. Again, button, make sure people aren't surprised by this kind of thing, and maybe put in a barrier so they can't accidentally fall into it if they've enabled teleport button. So let's go through some specific types of world games. If your game requires NPCs, which more people are starting to put in because that's fun having non-player characters in games, you need to make sure they have closed captions using maybe a HUD or something like that, or some caption bubbles that appear. Likewise, any noises that are critical to the game, make sure they have visual effects and that people can tell that a noise is happening even if they can't hear. If your game requires fast movement and you're someone who normally plays with, moving around, check how it works with teleport controls. It should be possible to make most games still work with teleport controls. And likewise, check for if people are using snap turning. I'm someone who uses snap turning because I've always found that smooth turning makes me sick. So if you have a world which maybe messes with the default VRChat locomotion system, make sure you have an option for snap turning. If your game requires jumping, again, provide an alternative. I know someone who, when they started VRChat, literally disabled the jump button because it was too discomforting. They've got over that over time, but consider it. And on the more non-physical side of things, if your game requires reading and puzzle solving, think about the hint system and the assistance features that can help users get over things if they're stuck. Pop Escape has a really good example of this, where you can have progressive hints that help you along. But likewise, if you've got a game which requires reading and remembering stuff, a lot of people have difficulty with short-term memory. Have an inventory of, or a notebook of things where it's like, oh yes, you learnt about this, you learnt about this. You know when a user has picked up something, automatically make a copy of it for them to refer to. If you've got a very complicated game, don't ask people to read. It's a trope which I often say to people, but people don't read in VR chat, or at least they don't like it. Have a video. Videos are a really good way to have a quick explanation of how to play. Lets people physically see how to play. This one in Laserdome even has closed captioning, which is really great. Always remember to put closed captioning on such videos. Pop Escape also starts with a little video that explains the ground rules of how the game will work. And if you're building something where there's both people who are playing and not playing, I'm sure many of you have played games where you have a lobby area that you can stand in. Make sure it's easy to tell whether or not you're playing or whether you're not playing, and don't just throw everybody into the game if they're not prepared for it. If you've just spawned in and immediately get thrown into a game, that's disconcerting and not a great experience. So, the other big important type of world, club worlds. Or please don't disintegrate your patrons with lasers, even if it's really tempting. If there's one great thing about club worlds in VR chat, it's they're safe. A lot of people like to go clubbing in VR chat, and it's for them possibly the better way to go clubbing, because you're at home at any point. If you're overwhelmed, you can take your headset off, but you can still enjoy a thrilling music. You can still enjoy thrilling music together. And the other great thing about them is that you as a player can come customize the experience exactly to what's comfortable to you. It's like going to a silent disco, but for your eyes. The great thing about that is that you don't have to have compromises. This is Base Station 2.0, which is a world that I've helped work on with Abe's Protocol and the rest of the team for Base Station. We're really proud of it. There is a lot of static lighting in this that is just on all the time. Comfortable lighting default conditions can be very comfortable for people who have epilepsy and just need to turn everything off. But likewise, if you have a reasonably bright club as a baseline, this can actually mean that they'll still turn certain effects on because because epilepsy is often dependent on the contrast changes, and if the contrast change isn't too strong, they can maybe turn some of the effects on. The big one, show a clear warning message when you start. Yes, it's a lot of text. It's more about covering your backside, but it's important that you display this text and that there's clear warnings that there are visuals ahead, and that before any visuals activate, they have to pass this warning and say, I'm cool with that. In the case of the base station, for example, we don't even activate audio link until you click on the I understand, let me in which if they choose that to not have effects, they can click on the little toggle buttons on the side, and then when they click the pass, the effects are never enabled. The other great thing about entry things is they also provide the place for people with performance issues to turn effects down. This is Defiance Square, which was a New Year's Eve world that I assisted on. The entry message also lets you configure that, oh, I'm on a slower system, please don't turn everything on. And, as I'm sure everybody who goes to Plurality knows, Clubfin has a really simple solution to this, which is the different doorways, where they have a consistent color scheme between each world. You just walk through the door, your options are set. It's a really great, easy option. It's something I'm thinking about doing for Base Station as well, using gate passes and things. If you do have an audio-only mode, make sure the default lighting is comfortable. Again, you want to make sure that even if you're there only for the music, you're not stuck in the dark. Style and integrate your prefab controls. If you're using a standard lighting system like VRSL or a media player like Texel Player, they have options and things to let you customize their colors and blend them into your UI and make it part of a seamless experience. It gives your world a little bit more polish and makes it look like, you know, you've actually done some customization to the world. You've not just thrown in a system and hoped for the best. Another good example here is Stageflight. They have very detailed controls at Stageflight, with even things like tooltips when you roll over. This was all created by Happy Robot, who did a lot of work on this one. Has tons of both coarse options, where you can just be like, this option, but it's also got detailed options. You can break down very specific things like individual parts. And you've also got stuff like video smoothing, which is something that was being created by Pam, and they've done some really good work on making it so that even if your VJ has flashy lights in the video, that doesn't affect the people who may be sensitive to those, because you can't always ask your DJs to remove every single flashing event from a video. So, summarizing. Accessibility is part of your entire world building process. You can't just do it at the end. You need to be thinking about it the entire way through, and it'll come out better for that. Think about the themes and the feelings that you convey throughout your build as well. Make sure your interfaces reflect that in the designs. Different visitors will have different needs. Keep your interfaces easy to find, and let users tailor their experience to exactly how they want. Make sure the entry spawn areas of your world set the tone, and then once people leave those, use wayfinding and other sort of architectural style techniques to guide people around the world and help them find what there is to see. And different moods of your world can be reflected in different kinds of controls, be they fast movement, physical, or relaxed and easy to use. Use ones that are appropriate, again, to the feelings that you want to convey for your world. and being fun and inclusive will encourage people to stick around, which is the most important thing. You want people to come back to your world. You want your world to be popular. You want to, I don't know, if you're looking to make money on VR chat, you want more patrons, etc. You want to have people come and visit. Be inclusive, and your world will grow. And most important, listen to feedback. If someone says something in your world was maybe uncomfortable, or I didn't like this thing, or I'm having trouble with this feature, don't go, oh, you just need to. Listen to them first, and work out what the problem was that they were having, and see if you can come up with a workaround for them, and something that will overall actually make it better for everyone. And that's it. Got a bit of time for questions and the like, but if you want to reach me, that's my Blue Sky handle. I've got the little custom ones, and I do have a GitHub where I occasionally post code. I've posted a few things there. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the talk. Time for questions. Which I will now wait for my lovely assistant, Sora, to assist with. Get some water, finally.
Hi, hello, I'm over here. I exist as well. Alright, so I'm going to be fielding a lot of these questions from the Discord, so if you have a question, throw it over there. From, let's see... here's one. From Dr. Blackrat over in the Discord. When I first visited the Confuzzled portal, I myself was a bit frustrated with the UI there due to animations that played when switching sections being really long, and there being a lot of submenus with only 2 to 3 options in them, so finding out what is where took a bit, especially in combination with my first point. What's your opinion on this, and how do you manage having too many versus too little subcategories? Yeah,
yes, that's fair. The UI was, we did have a lot of tuning that went around. It was slower before, and we tried to make it a bit faster. Trying to make menus snappy is tricky because you want, there's a trade-off between like having things transition between different sections and making stuff, very responsive. I probably would, in retrospect, make that UI a little bit faster than it was. It's always a learning process. We had a instantaneous UI the previous year, and this year it was like, oh, maybe we can add a little bit of animation, but maybe it was a little bit too much animation. The other aspect is also, yes, you're trying to decide, for example, is turning off audio link a visual thing because it's visual, or is it relating to sound, so it goes in the sound section, or maybe the flashing is an accessibility. In that case, it probably might have been a good idea to actually have that option in every single panel, because there's no reason you can't have multiple copies of a Switch somewhere. Yes, fair feedback on that one. I will take that into account for next year.
Everything is always iterative. Always
Yes.
iterative.
Yes.
Here's one from Suki the Dwagon. That is with a DW. I'm curious, does Club Fin have any audio-related accessibility options? Because my main concern with going to Club Fin is audio sensory issues and less than visual ones.
Well, I didn't make Club Fin. I know the person who did make it is actually here right now, but they're operating cameras. The main thing I think they have is, I know they have a toggle for which is called fast lights, and if you turn that off, you still get the lighting effects, but they've been slowed down, which is quite nice. And what was the other? Was it audio sensitivity they were talking about specifically?
Yes, they a lot of extra questions just came through. They have audio sensory issues more than visual ones.
Yeah, well, it does have a volume control for specifically the world video stream, so that's the main option that you have there, as always, which and then most of the options after that are related to the visuals. But it does have a volume control specifically for that, and you can set that before you walk through the doors for the first time. It doesn't start, again, Clubfin has the thing where it doesn't start playback of anything until you walk through one of those doors. So you can set the options for that before you enter the door, which is quite good.
That's always been one of my favorite little bits, is that like everything is just completely like stalled out. It lets you get your bearings, get acquainted, everything load in, and then you can like make your selection. That's always been a very high point for me. This is from Skull the Roo. What are some of the best colors to use in UI design? And Gale also has one that kind of touches on this. For color blindness support, what colors are safer bets when designing a color palette?
That's a good series of questions. The best thing, there aren't per se right or wrong colors. You can still use things like the common things of like green meaning on, or red meaning off, or red meaning danger. That kind of thing is a common one. But again, red can mean good things in certain cultures. The best thing to do is pick colors that blend and work well with the rest of your world, and don't distract too much in general. Likewise, test, basically. Go into desktop mode and take some screenshots of your world, and then try going onto various websites that are out there that let you upload the screenshot and take a look at what it looks like with different kinds of color blindness. This is a very good tool. Don't use the colorblind filters in VR chat. That's more supposed to be for letting you see better if you have that kind of color blindness. But yeah, take screenshots of your world, load them in, see how they look, and if the colors are too similar, change the color, or maybe change the contrast of the color.
My old boss actually did have color blindness, so he was constantly asking us color matching stuff. Color wheels, very, very helpful.
Yes.
And
yeah,
when
Adobe,
in doubt, ask.
Yeah, Adobe Cooler, or Adobe Color is a nice tool that's mostly free, I think, and lets you do things like pick one main color, and then it'll suggest two complementary or two contrasting colors to help you come up with a color scheme.
This is from EXO. You mentioned box UI not being accessible to avatars at extreme sizes. Is there a good in-world UI style that would help with that, or is it just best to just have a screen space or player-anchored UI?
Both of those options are good in terms of the best kind of UI in terms of like reachability is the Unity UI panels, because like in VR Chat's own built-in system, it uses lasers. If there was a panel somewhere over the other side of this world right now, I'd be able to click on it if I could aim tightly enough at the button. Conversely, though, you may want to have a UI which follows players around and adjusts to their size. We can get that information. What is the current player's height or eye height? And you can read that back and then, say, move a panel physically up and down if you're using more physical controls. So yeah, that is an option. Use player height to determine the player's actual size, and then use that to help you readjust things in your world.
We got time for one more good one. So this one I feel might be a really good one to end off on. This is from Fed Phoenix, Phed. How would you advise worlds that force locomotion like roller coaster rides or cars make a better experience for those who have to use the third-person locomotion? My friend has issues using locomotion due to VR sickness and has to skip some worlds because they force those kind of locomotions.
Yes. There are definitely some worlds out there, things like weird gravity worlds, etc., that use custom locomotion, and they can be very, very sickness-inducing. Sometimes it's hard to deal with, but things such as rides, I know Valve, if you've played Half-Life Alyx, you'll know that any time you're in like a lift or something, it really encloses around you and you can barely see out. I know one of the minecart ride worlds in VR Chat has an option for enhanced motion sickness protection, where it will add more enclosure around you. It's known that if you have if you have things in your peripheral vision, it's more likely to mean that it'll less likely affect you with motion sickness. So consider that, having things that enclose the player a little bit more that they can turn on, and ultimately, if it's a requirement to get around your world, you may want to consider having jump options, etc., that just let people bypass difficult areas. Again, test with your friends who have difficulties like this. Once they start to get uncomfortable, rein it back in a little bit, or work on stuff together. Always good to test with people who actually. Yeah, always good to test with people.
Vignetting is common.
Yes, yeah. Always good to test with people who have actual accessibility conditions, rather than just trying to guess. Find people who have them, ask them to help.
Also, tacking onto that, whenever you get too close to the edge of your play space, by default, it would have like that grid set up. You can turn that on by default and have it very transparent, and that actually helps your brain anchor itself so you don't actually get thrown around, because the motion sickness is a desync between your body's internal system and your mind. So if you have something for your visual to anchor, that can also solve a bunch of issues. That's
another thing. You can sometimes, if you have, the more stuff you have to visually anchor yourself in view, the better it is. Thank you for the questions. I'll keep an eye on the Discord. It might take me a little bit, but I will go back and take a look at all the questions afterwards and try and answer them all. And also thank you to everybody who helped me with the panel, both here in the audience and those who couldn't make it as well. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you in the next panel.
Yes. See you later.